I want to go back on a couple things really quick. So if you pay your legislative staff, a brand new member of legislative staff, $35,000 a year, and mine is getting paid $45,000 a year, if the collectively bargained rate is less than the 45, will my staff member lose wages?
If there's a collective bargaining unit in place, and if the employees are subject to the collective bargaining unit, that's what salary would control.
So it's possible they could lose salary.
In your hypothetical, it's possible.
I mean, to be fair, I'm sure that we have a number of legislative staff, and I'm talking about district staff mostly. You know, mine may not necessarily do more, but do different things than staff in other districts. But they're going to come up with a wage rate for each and every legislative staff, no matter if they live in Chicago with a higher cost of living or in Murrayville with a lower cost of living.
Let me emphasize the language that's in the amendment. You, as the legislator, have the authority to hire a chief of staff, a deputy chief of staff, or a functional equivalent. If that's what you do, that position would be exempt from the bargaining unit. I mean, we're not even having this discussion. Pay them whatever you want. Pay them your entire allotment if you want. If they're part of the collective bargaining unit, the way a collective bargaining unit works is those are the negotiated salaries, and that's what they would get paid.
It is certainly possible for a member of staff to have a decrease in wage. So in committee, we discussed, I asked a couple questions about this. You've never had the privilege of serving in the minority party. Unfortunately, I think everybody should have that opportunity at some time in their career, in their life. Our staff often operates at a disadvantage because they haven't had the opportunity to sit at the table during negotiations, whether it's budget, whether it's some of the larger bills that we deal with that are sometimes rushed through. So our staff is tasked with the job of figuring out why something is written a certain way. Not only that, but going through page by page to figure out what changes were actually made. And I want to just get this on the record that you assure us that when, say, the Safety Act is passed at 2:30 in the morning, that our staff will have ample time to review that within the constraints of time. Because we know that one of the gripes from members of your staff has been the hours and sometimes the working conditions. So I just want to make sure that we are given ample amount of time, because at 2:30 in the morning, they may not be able to call an association or something like that to get the background of why something was written a certain way.
As I said to you yesterday in committee, since I've been speaker, I have been committed to making this place run better. We have continued to improve our processes, continued to try to do better, continued to try to give you more time to read bills. We were very intentional about doing our budget different than we've ever done it before. And instead of using that ample time to read the budget, you wrapped it in a bow and stuck it on the desk. I would have recommended you use that ample time instead of wrapping it in a bowl to read the budget.
I didn't wrap any budget in it.
If you read the budget, you would have seen in that document that you voted no to, that your caucus of 40 members get the same amount of money that our caucus gets with 78. Your members are getting paid more money than our members, staff, because you have the same amount of money that we do, even though you vote no. Don't talk to me about fairness We're here trying to do something better for our staff. But what is really wrong here is that your staff makes more than my staff and you don't even vote for the budget. Think about what's wrong with that. Think about what's wrong with that.
And apparently we haven't had issues with staff retention that your side has
Because
had.
Democrats vote for a budget that pay them.
And you're the ones having issues with retention. So
You have retention issues too, Representative, but they're less because Democrats vote for a budget that give you the same amount of money that we have to run a much larger staff. So just do the math. Now, next year when I ask you to put votes on the budget, I'm going to recommend you put votes on the budget. Again.
I'd be happy to work with you if we're involved in the negotiations, but this isn't about the budget.
It is about the budget. It has a lot to do with the budget.
A question that I asked you yesterday, in your discussions with Senate President Harmon, you said you spoke with him prior to filing the original bill.
That is correct.
Have you had discussions with him prior to filing this current amendment?
We, staff to staff, have had conversations.
Have you gotten any understanding of where his caucus is on this bill? Because generally on larger bills that deal with that affect both sides a little bit more, generally there's a little bit more tracking of where votes may be. Do you have any understanding of where his caucus will be?
As Speaker of the House, I've been working to understand where my caucus was on this issue, understanding where my staff was on this issue. We have had several conversations with staff in the other chamber. We're going to commit to continuing to have those conversations when this bill is over in the Senate. We're going to allow the legislative process to work. This is a House bill. We've had a lot of conversations. Those conversations are reflected in the amendment. Will there be more conversations? I presume so. But has there been an agreement? No.
So we do not have agreement.
Working.
Sorry to interrupt.
Legislative process is working.
So we do not have an agreement with the other side on this bill?
No.
Okay. So will you continue to work this bill on the other side?
I think this bill is an excellent bill. That's why I'm standing here presenting it. It's my hope that they would just pass it as is. But I recognize and respect the other chamber's right to take this through their process, to caucus with their caucuses. If they make changes, we're going to work through it with them.
I would say probably generally on a bill that's taken this seriously, that the negotiations between the two sides are generally a little bit closer. I'm not sure that this bill is soup. I'm not sure that it's legitimate. I don't know where it's going to go in the Senate, and I know we don't always know where it's going to go in the Senate, but generally on things like this, we see the writing on the wall and the direction it's going. At this point, I think there's a lot of changes that need to be made, a lot of things that haven't been thought of. So I look forward to seeing how this vote goes.